Folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. You seen this crazy stuff online the last day or so? That woman that lost it on a flight, screaming that it's not real, it's not human, or something like that. It's kind of got the whole internet, or at least a portion of it, abuzz right now. I know that some people are saying that that video is a couple of years old. Others are saying that it's not. Some people believe that she was drunk or just crazy. Some people think that she saw some kind of lizard person, you know, with like the eyelids that blinked like this. And it's just all kinds of stuff. Then there's another one that's floating around since then. I guess it's on a British flight or something. Guy kind of does the same thing in a way. Loses it, tries to actually open the door in flight, screaming about someone that's not real or someone that's not human. It's interesting. It makes you wonder if it's this that's gotten into people's heads. I don't know, maybe it's some kind of demonic thing. Maybe it's just people that are just crazy. Maybe they gave him too many of those really expensive little bottles of whiskey on the flight. Who knows? It's just one of those things that make you go, Probably, one way or the other, it's probably some kind of psyop. I know, you're like, oh my gosh, Travis, everything's a psyop with you. Well, a lot of things are that people don't realize they are, and maybe this is one of them. Gets people all, you know, ruffled up and talking about stuff and distracted from things and thinking that things are just going crazy. The problem is, in my opinion, and I'm not really talking about the woman or the guy on the flight seeing shapeshifter lizard people, is that I think that a lot of people in our circle, and I'm speaking of people that claim that they are preppers, people that are homesteaders, preppers, whatever you want to call yourselves. I think there's too many people that aren't taking stuff serious enough. Too many people that, you know, they watch this content. And others saying many of the same things that I'm saying. They watch the same news. They get the same kind of news out there. You know, they're paying attention to all these things going on in the world. But deep down inside, that they've convinced themselves that, you know, yeah, it's probably going to be bad, but I mean, is it going to be that kind of bad? I mean, is it really going to be like a, you know, complete collapse bad? You know, probably not, I'm sure they tell themselves. I mean, it may be a little bit worse than what COVID was. It could even possibly be as bad as like the Great Depression. But, I mean, really, is it going to be that bad? And I think a lot of people, I don't know, kind of think that maybe it's not going to be that bad. Maybe it's just, you know, they can withstand it. It's something that they can handle, you know. It's just things be getting crazy, and that's all. I think a lot of people also think that it's far off. They think that whatever is going to happen, that they've still got time left. They've still got years left. Now, I say these things because I hear from people all the time. I read the comments, maybe not all of them, but I read enough comments. And I get emails, and then I talk to people in person. And there's so many people out there that when you tell them how bad things are, their idea of how bad it's going to get or what it's going to be like is always fairly downplayed. Now, I do see people and I do meet people and hear from people often that think that it's going to be, you know, some kind of Mad Max apocalyptic scenario. But there are a lot of people out there in the prepping world that think that, you know, it's survivable, you know, everything's going to be in place. If there is some kind of grid down or something, it may be a couple of weeks or so. You know, the supply chains will slow down like they had been. But there'll still be stuff available. I mean, you can still watch your TV, and you can still, get the water out of your well. And I believe this because there are so many people that their preparedness plan is heavily dependent upon things still existing. It's heavily dependent upon a grid being in existence. It's heavily dependent upon a supply chain being in existence. That might be more expensive. It might be limited, but it's still there. And then, like I said, there's a lot of people that still believe that we're years away. I have people, that come to our meetings, our big monthly meeting, and I'm not putting any of them down, but they believe that it's still several years away, 5, 10 years away. It's possible. I mean, I've heard people online talk about how, CBDCs, digital currencies, it's not going to happen for at least another 10, 15, 20 years. It's possible. I'm not putting any of those people down that think that. It's possible that that's the case. It's possible that it's not going to be nearly as bad as what some people think. It's possible that we do have many years left before things really kind of fall off the cliff. But here's the thing. As preppers, as people that are trying to strive to be ready for an emergency, we should take an account of all possible scenarios. Because if you're only preparing for what you think and have convinced yourself in your mind to prepare for, how prepared are you? I mean, think back in your life. How many things have gone according to your plan? Really? I mean, how many times you got the job and it worked out, and you got the pay, and you got the house, and you got the car, and all these things that you had planned out? How many times? I mean, there's probably some of you out there that could say, oh, that happens to me all the time. But I can tell you from my personal experience, rarely do things ever work out how I have planned them. And so if you have sat down and you have gone through the news and you've watched all the videos and you have come up and devised this plan of your scenario of what's going to happen, and you have orchestrated and built your plan around what you think is going to happen, that's actually a pretty dangerous plan because it's all based on you being right. And there's so many people out there that have convinced themselves that America is never going to see, Venezuela style stuff. It's never going to be as bad as it was in Sri Lanka. It's never going to be, Weimar Germany. It's never going to be, like places in Africa, South Africa. It's never going to be that way because we're America. We're different. We're better. We're bigger. A lot of people have convinced themselves of that. They've convinced themselves that, well, there'll probably be a digital currency, but we'll still have this paper money and we'll just trade that instead. Or, it just won't work out for them and they'll finally go back and start letting us do the paper money. All those are possible. But what if you're wrong? That's the point. You have to plan and have a contingency plan for when you're absolutely wrong, for when things get horribly bad. So what is your plan if things get apocalyptic bad? What is your plan if those things start happening soon? And when I say soon, I'd say less than 6 months. To me, that's soon. Is it under 6 months? Do we have 6 months left? Maybe. We may have 6 years. We could have 6 decades. We could have 6 millennia. Not likely, but you know what I'm saying. But have you planned for everything falling apart in 6 weeks or 6 months? Have you planned for things truly, completely falling out from underneath you? Every bit of security measure, safety net, everything that you've ever been used to in your life completely being taken away from you. Are you prepared for that? Because that's a real level of preparedness. Some of you may say, well, I don't have all the stuff, and I'm not in the right place in the land, and I don't have all this and that. Well, you better work on it, and you better work on it fast. The biggest thing you need, though, is your mindset. You have a mindset, and you're determined to survive through all that. And you've sat there and you have thought out in your mind potential very drastic and radical scenarios. And you've kind of figured out a way that you might be able to eke out some kind of existence in that. then you're way ahead of most people. Too many people I find, and I'm speaking of in the prepper world. I'm not speaking of the normies out there that are in, sheep land. I'm speaking of folks like you and I. I find that too many people have convinced themselves that it may happen, but it's not going to be that bad, and that we can still survive this. And just because, I've got some little gadgets that I bought off of Amazon, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to survive. And they're not really planning and preparing themselves, especially mentally, for when all of the bad stuff happens, for when it all falls apart. No one really thinks about that, at least a lot of people. Some of you are pretty hardcore. I know you are. You've talked to me. Some of you are absolutely hardcore, and you're waiting for the apocalypse to happen at any moment. And good on you. A lot of people think you're crazy. A lot of people think that you're so obsessed and you live in fear, and you don't. I know you don't. You don't live in fear because you live this way. You actually live very comfortable. You actually have a good peace about you because you know in your heart you truly are prepared for the absolute worst. You're not a paranoid, person. You sleep good at night because you know that you are really ready for it all to happen. For the rest of you, I want to encourage you very strongly to kind of wake up a little bit more. You obviously have awakened somewhat because you're watching this kind of content. But you need to push yourself a little bit more. I'm not saying that the world's going to end in 6 months. That's not it. But I think really bad case scenarios are closer than we think. I think that the probability of those things are higher than we think. I think the possibility of things getting extremely bad, as bad as we've probably ever seen in history. And I think the probability of those things happening in the near future are all pretty high right now, considering everything that's going on. It's not just looking at, what's the chances of a nuke going off somewhere on the planet, over the next 6 months? There's that number. Well, what's the chances of another pandemic happening that's worse than the last one? Well, there's that number. Well, what's the chances of a banking collapse, or at least a large portion of banks to collapse? Oh, there's another number. What's the chances of the U.S. dollar losing a lot of value when BRICS comes out with their gold-backed dollar? Oh, there's some more. What's the chances of there being some kind of, black swan event where the supply chain shut down, or there's some kind of EMP, or there's some kind of grid attack, or on and on and on. When you start to add those up, because multiple really bad scenarios right now are on the table. It's not like it was 5 and 10 years ago where you could say that, well, there's certain things that I'd say are very, very slim chance of them happening. There's a lot of very serious things on the table right now, and many of them have a pretty decent probability of them happening. And many people are still just, they're playing house. They're playing around. And I'm not saying this to put people down. Please, please, please don't think that I'm come at this from any kind of ego, because I know that there's a lot of areas that I'm still not prepared in, that I'm still striving and working hard every day to try to get myself a little bit more prepared. My family, the things that we're doing. We're not the master level preppers, but there are still so many people out there. They're just kind of playing house. They think because they have a couple of weeks' food in their pantry and, a couple of cases of bottled water in their, garage, they're good to go. And they just don't get it. And if you're one of those watching this, please understand that I am not criticizing you. I'm not scolding you, and I'm certainly not trying to embarrass you. What I'm trying to do is to jar you awake and tell you that you need to be a lot more serious. That the possibility of things getting extremely bad and the possibility of those extremely bad things happening, well, a lot sooner than you think, are starting to get pretty good. You need to be getting your houses in order, people. You need to be getting yourselves ready mentally, physically, and spiritually, and taking it serious. because whether it's 6 years from now, 6 months from now, or 6 weeks from now, odds are things are looking pretty good for some bad stuff to happen. And you want to be the one prepared. A lot of bad things already has happened. And I can promise you some bad things will be happening in the future. You just need to get ready for it. Folks, it's nothing to play around with. It's not a hobby. It's not something you do when you have nothing else to do. It's serious. Take it serious and get ready. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.